The wind had a way of speaking in that town, low and mean, like it carried secrets no one dared tell out loud. It blew through the empty streets of Crimson Ridge, stirring dust around the broken hitching posts and the faded sign that once read, "Welcome Travelers." Now it swung on a single hinge, creaking like an old man in pain. Shutters were nailed shut. Curtains were drawn. Somewhere, a loose plank slapped against a wall with every gust, echoing through the silence. The air smelled of dry wood, whiskey, and fear. The town hadn't heard laughter in weeks, not since the red vultures came down from the canyon. They weren't outlaws the way most men understood the word. They were a kind of sickness, riding red horses and leaving death behind. 10 men, led by Clay Harlon, a broad-shouldered devil with a grin like a knife cut across his face. Every month, they came to collect tax from Crimson Ridge, gold, grain, or blood, and the townsfolk had learned it was cheaper to pay in silence. That morning, the wind shifted again. The sound of hooves came from the ridge, slow at first, then steady, like thunder learning to walk. Mothers pulled children inside. Doors bolted. A preacher crossed himself in the dark. The red vultures were coming. Harlon and his men rode through the main street, dust rising like smoke behind them. Their coats were the color of dried blood. Their horses were lean and mean, eyes glinting wild under the sun. One of them, a bearded brute called Mackie, spat on the church steps and laughed. "Still praying, folks," he said. "Ain't work yet." The gang dismounted in front of the Silver Spur Saloon, their boots heavy on the boards. Harlon walked in first. The piano stopped mid-song. Cards froze midair. Inside, maybe 30 people sat, ranchers, drifters, a few women in faded dresses. None looked up. All of them smelled the same thing, trouble. Harlan's spurs jingled as he reached the bar. "Whiskey," he said. The bartender poured with shaking hands. Harlon grinned, looking around. "Now then," he said, loud enough for all to hear. "Where's my due? I told you folks, last month was late." No one spoke. In the corner, a young man, barely 20, tried to stand, maybe to reason, maybe to fight. Harlon didn't wait to find out. His gun barked once. The boy fell, his chair crashing beneath him. Silence again. No one moved. No one breathed. "That," Harlon said, setting his glass down, "is interest." They stayed until afternoon, laughing, drinking, firing bullets at bottles lined up on the bar. By the time they rode out, 2 men were dead, and the saloon floor was painted red. When the sound of hooves faded, life didn't return. The silence after was worse than the noise before. Because now everyone knew. The town had no sheriff, no law, and no hope. Or so they thought. At dusk, Mary Carter saw him first. She was drawing water from the well behind her boarding house when she spotted a figure by the old church at the edge of town. Tall, still as a gravestone, coat dark with dust. He wasn't one of Harlan's men, that much was certain. His horse was tethered near the steps, a lean gray gelding with scars down its flank. The man himself was turned toward the dying sun, hat brim low, watching something only he could see. "Evening," she said softly, though she didn't know why. He turned his head slightly. His face was worn by the trail, tanned, lined, eyes pale as winter sky. He gave a single nod and went back to watching the horizon. That night, the saloon lit up again, full of men drinking away their fear. Rumors spread fast. The black-coated stranger, the church, the way he carried himself, like a man who'd known war. Some said he was a bounty hunter. Some said he was death himself, come walking in boots. By the time he entered the Silver Spur, every pair of eyes found him. The door creaked open slow. Wind followed him in, swirling dust underfoot. He walked to the bar, his steps even, his shoulders straight. No spurs, no noise, the kind of quiet that made men nervous. The bartender froze mid-pour. The stranger said just one word, "Water." You could have heard a coin drop. A few outlaws, men who worked for Harlon or feared him enough to act like they did, started snickering. One of them, the same brute from earlier, pushed off from his chair and swaggered over. "Well now," Mackie said, voice thick with whiskey. "Ain't that something? A real tough gunman, or daring water." He grinned, teeth yellow. You lost, friend. The stranger didn't answer. He lifted the glass, took a slow sip, eyes never leaving Mackey's face. Mackey's smile twitched. I'm talking to you, Drifter. Finally, the stranger set his glass down. His voice was low, calm. I heard you. Mackey leaned closer. Then say something. Maybe tell us what a man like you's doing in our town. The stranger looked him over, boots, gun, eyes full of cheap courage, and said, Didn't know it was yours. The laughter that followed was sharp and cruel. Mackey slammed his palm on the bar, knocking over bottles. You got a mouth on you, boy. Maybe I oughta. He didn't finish. The stranger's hand moved once, so fast the eye barely caught it. His revolver was out, cocked, aimed square at Mackey's chest. The hammer clicked loud enough to stop every sound in the room. Sit down, the stranger said. Mackey froze. His throat bobbed. The laughter died quick. After a long second, he stepped back and dropped into his chair. The stranger holstered his gun without another word and went back to his drink. The room stayed quiet. The piano player wiped sweat from his forehead and stared at the keys. Someone whispered, Who is he? No one answered. Outside, thunder rolled across the far hills. Lightning flashed, white and violent, lighting the street for a heartbeat. The stranger didn't flinch. He just glanced toward the window, eyes narrowing, as if he saw something out there in the dark. A memory maybe, or a ghost. When he turned back, Mary Carter was standing in the doorway, shawl pulled tight around her shoulders. She'd come to see if the rumors were true. And when she saw his face in the lamplight, her breath caught. She knew him, or thought she did. It had been years, but the scar along his jaw was the same. The eyes, too, cold, pale, steady as they'd been the night he saved her and her boy from raiders on the trail to Abilene. Back then, his name was whispered among lawmen and killers alike. Eli Graves, U.S. Marshal. But Eli Graves was dead. Everyone knew that. The Red Vultures saw to it 5 years ago. And yet here he stood, alive, older, carved out of silence and dust. As she watched, Mackey's voice broke through again, drunken, bitter. You ain't got the nerve to stay here, stranger. Men die in Crimson Ridge. The stranger turned his head slightly, eyes shadowed beneath the brim of his hat. Lightning flashed again, painting his face in white fire. I don't drink with murderers, he said. Then he set down his glass, turned, and walked out into the storm. The saloon door swung behind him, the sound echoing like a final word. For a moment, no one moved. Then, far off, thunder cracked again, rolling over the hills like distant gunfire. And in that sound, something shifted. Hope maybe, or the promise of reckoning. By the time the wind died, the stranger was gone from sight. Only the old church bell moved in the breeze, swaying without sound, as if tolling for the men who'd soon meet their end. Mary Carter couldn't sleep that night. The storm had passed, but the air still trembled with its memory. She sat by the window of her small room above the boarding house, a kerosene lamp burning low beside her. Outside, the town lay drowned in darkness, one of those western nights where even the stars seemed afraid to shine. She kept seeing his face, the man from the saloon, the stranger who'd spoken with that steady, death-born calm. Every line on his face seemed carved from pain and miles. His voice had carried a weight that stirred ghosts she thought long buried. When the first rooster crowed somewhere out in the dark, she gave up pretending to rest. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and stepped out into the chill dawn. Her boots whispered over the dirt road as she made her way toward the old church. He was there, just as she knew he'd be, sitting on the steps, hat in his hands, eyes fixed on the horizon where the sun had not yet dared to rise. His horse was tethered nearby, steam rising from its nostrils in the cold. I thought it was you, she said softly. He turned his head. For a moment, there was nothing in his eyes but that pale, distant calm. Then recognition flickered, a quiet acknowledgement of years that had passed between them. Mrs. Carter, he said, didn't expect you'd remember. How could I forget? Her voice trembled. You pulled my boy out from under a burning wagon. You carried him clear through gunfire. You saved us both. He looked away, as though the memory weighed too heavy to hold. That was a long time ago. She stepped closer, searching his face. You were a lawman then. A marshal, weren't you? He didn't answer at first. Then, after a long silence, he nodded once. Was. She sat beside him, the wood cold beneath her. The wind carried the smell of ash from somewhere far off, the faint, bitter perfume of the frontier. They said you were dead, that the red vultures took you up in the hills after that mail run. They tried. His tone was quiet, flat, but beneath it lay a deep tremor. A storm barely held at bay. We were hauling payroll money, gold bars bound for Yuma. Harlon and his gang hit us before dawn. 10 men under my command. Only one walked away. You. He nodded. Barely. They left me in the river. Thought the current would finish what their bullets didn't. But the river had other plans. She swallowed, eyes wet with the ghost of old grief. My husband was with that caravan. He turned to her slowly. Carter. Her throat closed around the name. He never came back. I buried an empty box. They told me the gang burned everything. They did. His jaw tightened. I found what was left of the wagons 2 days later. The bodies, they'd been left for the crows. Your husband fought till the end. I remember that. Her hand trembled as she brushed away a tear. You remember him? I remember every man who died that day. He paused. I remember every bullet I owe Harlon. A church bell somewhere far away gave a single, lonely chime. The sound seemed to hang in the air between them. Mary took a deep breath. If you came back here for revenge, you'll only find death waiting. Harlon's got more men now. They kill for sport. I know what they are. Then ride on, she pleaded. Leave before they know you're here. He stood slowly, tall against the first gray light of dawn. They already know. She stared at him, heart stuttering. What do you mean? Harlon's eyes are everywhere, the kind that smell blood before the first drop hits dirt. They'll come at sunrise. Then run, she begged. Please, for once in your life, don't fight ghosts. He looked down at her, his face unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. The wind lifted his coat, carrying the smell of oil and gunmetal. Some debts, he said quietly, are paid in lead. He left her there, standing by the church, the morning rising like a bruise across the sky. By midday, the whispers had spread. The stranger wasn't just another drifter. He was the law once, a marshal who'd crawled out of his own grave. Some said he'd been sent by God. Others said he was the devil come to collect. In the saloon, 2 of Harlon's men were already drinking hard, trading nervous laughter. Clay ain't gonna like this. One muttered, he don't like old ghosts. The other grinned with cracked teeth. Ghost or not, Clay'll get him same as any man. He'll make a sport of it. By sunset, word had reached the canyon. Clay Harlon sat in his camp, boots propped on a fallen log, knife carving at an apple. He was older now, but the cruelty in him had aged fine, like whiskey that burned hotter with time. He listened to his scout with a thin smile. So the lawman's alive, he said. Marshal Graves. Yes, sir. Folks say he's in town. Harlon chuckled. Well, ain't that something? Thought the river carried that fool clear to hell. Guess it spat him back out. Good for him. He tossed the apple core into the fire and stood, his coat glinting with the dull shine of brass buttons looted long ago. Mount up. We ride at dawn. Let's finish what we started. Back in Crimson Ridge, the wind picked up again, howling through the empty streets. Lamps burned low in windows, their glow trembling against the darkness. The people who could leave had already gone, wagons rolling out under cover of night. Those who stayed did so out of pride, or fear of dying on the road. Inside the old boarding house, Mary watched the stranger through the cracked shutters. He sat at a table by the window, gun laid out before him, cleaning it with deliberate care. Every motion was slow, patient, ritualistic. The Colt .45 gleamed like something sacred. She walked in, hands clasped to keep them from shaking. You're waiting for them, she said. He didn't look up. They'll be here when the sun hits the street. You'll die. He smiled faintly. I already did. The words cut through her like cold iron. She took a hesitant step closer. What good will it do, killing them? It won't bring anyone back. No, he said, but it'll stop them from killing anyone else. The lamp beside him flickered. In its glow, she saw something half hidden beneath his coat, a worn leather locket, its hinge broken, its surface scorched by fire. She realized it wasn't a trinket of love, but a grave marker he carried close. He caught her gaze. Your husband had a good heart. He believed in the law when men stopped believing in God. I made him a promise I never kept. What promise? That I'd see his wife and boy safe. She couldn't speak, only nodded through her tears. Outside, the wind carried the sound of thunder again, though no storm brewed. It was hooves, many, moving fast, coming down the ridge. The sky began to pale at the edges, turning the horizon the color of cold steel. Mary's breath came quick. They're here. He rose, strapped his gun belt tight, and adjusted his coat. His eyes were clear, calm, certain. Get the boy to the cellar. Stay there until it's over. Over, she whispered. What does over mean? He gave a small, tired smile. When the wind stops howling. She reached for his arm. Eli, please. But he was already walking out into the dark, boots echoing on the boards like distant drums. She watched from the doorway as he stepped into the empty street, the dawn crawling up behind him, turning his silhouette to fire. He stood in the middle of Main Street, motionless, hand resting lightly on the worn handle of his Colt. The church bell swayed but did not ring. All around him, the town held its breath. The horizon bloomed red, and Eli Graves waited for the past to come riding home. The dawn came slow and blood-colored over Crimson Ridge. A thin fog clung to the low hills, turning every shadow into something alive. Before the sun breached the horizon, the silence was already trembling with sound, distant hooves, steady and growing louder. The red vultures were riding in. Their approach was like a storm of hooves and grit, the kind that carried the scent of gunpowder and rot. The men rode in tight formation, 10 in all, their horses lathered with sweat, eyes wild from the long night ride. Dust rose behind them in a burning halo, glowing red under the first kiss of sunlight. At their head rode Clay Harlon, coat flapping like black wings, a long scar cutting through the corner of his mouth, twisting his grin into something cruel. He reined in on the edge of town, standing tall in the saddle, surveying what was left of Crimson Ridge. The streets were empty, windows shuttered, doors barred, the kind of quiet that made lesser men nervous. Well, Harlon called, his voice carrying through the still air. Looks like they all learned to hide. Shame. I was hoping for a little welcome. The gang chuckled, the sound brittle and mean. One of them, a scrawny man with a red bandana over his mouth, spat into the dirt. Maybe they all run off. Harlon grinned, showing yellow teeth. Maybe. But I got a feeling they left something behind worth killing for. He dismounted, boots crunching in the dust. His spurs chimed with every step as he made his way down the main street. His men followed, fanning out like wolves sniffing blood. A broken sign swung in the breeze. The saloon doors creaked, ghostly in the wind. Marshal Graves, Harlon said loud enough for the town to hear. That you I heard crawled back from the river? You should have stayed under the water, boy. There ain't no resurrection out here. A door opened somewhere down the street. Every gun turned. From the far end of town, a man stepped into the open. He walked slow, deliberate, his coat moving with the wind, dust swirling around his boots. His hat was pulled low, his revolver resting easy at his hip. No twitch of fear in his stride, just a calm that didn't belong in this world. Harlon laughed. Well, I'll be damned. The ghost himself. Eli Graves stopped in the center of the road. The space between them stretched wide and silent, the air tight as a drawn bowstring. You're a hard man to bury, Marshal, Harlon called out. Guess you didn't dig deep enough, Eli said. That voice, steady, low, almost gentle, cut through the wind like steel through cloth. Even the horses stilled, sensing something sacred in it, something final. The outlaw with the red bandana raised his rifle, his nerves snapping before his reason did. He fired. The bullet clipped the brim of Eli's hat, spinning it into the dust. Before the echo faded, Eli's hand moved. His Colt cleared leather in a flash of sun and smoke. One shot cracked, and the outlaw dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. The sound rolled down the street and vanished. No one breathed. Eli stepped forward, slow, eyes locked on Harlon. "Leave him," Harlon said to the others, voice edged with something sharp, fear disguised as humor. "Let's see if the marshal's still got his aim." The street erupted. Gunfire tore the morning open. The vultures spread, ducking behind troughs, wagons, porch rails, firing wild into the dust. Eli moved like a man possessed, each step measured, each shot finding its home. He didn't waste bullets. He didn't miss. One outlaw tried flanking him from the right. Eli dropped him with a single round to the chest. Another fired from behind a water barrel. Eli's bullet punched through the wood and into the man's heart. The air filled with smoke and the metallic tang of blood. Horses screamed, bolting loose, eyes rolling white. The sun rose higher, turning the dust into a curtain of red haze. And through it all, Eli walked steady. For a moment, he wasn't in Crimson Ridge. The noise fell away, and he was back in that canyon 5 years ago. The mail caravan ambushed at dawn, fire licking at wagons, gold spilling into the dirt like sunlight made solid. He remembered the smell of burning flesh, the cries of dying men, and Clay Harlon's laughter echoing across the cliffs. They'd been comrades once, brothers by war. Both rode under the Union flag in the final year, marksmen in the same regiment. Harlon had the charm, the swagger, the kind of smile that fooled officers and gamblers alike. But greed had rotted him from within. When the war ended, the gold shipments began, and so did the temptation. One morning, Eli woke to find his men gone, the wagons burning, and Harlon's bullet in his chest. The memory snapped away as another shot whined past his ear. He ducked, fired, and another man fell. The fight dragged on short, savage, and one-sided. By the time the clock struck 11, only 3 of the vultures were still breathing. Harlon stood in the middle of the street, face streaked with sweat and dust, disbelief twisting his features. Around him lay his men, 10 of the worst devils the frontier had known, cut down like stalks before a scythe. "You ain't human," he spat. "You can't be." Eli reloaded, the click of the revolver echoing like a judge's gavel. "No," he said, "just what you made me." Harlon's eyes darted toward the saloon, where 2 of his remaining men crouched near the door. "Inside," he barked. They ran, boots pounding, and before Eli could raise his gun, Harlon lunged after them, ducking behind a wagon and firing wild to cover his retreat. Bullets tore up planks near Eli's boots. He dove behind a trough, breath harsh, gun hand steady. Then screams. A woman's voice. Eli's stomach turned cold. He saw them through the dust. Harlon's men bursting through the saloon doors with Mary Carter in their grip, her arms pinned, her face streaked with terror. Harlon followed, pressing his revolver against her temple. "Drop it, Marshal," he roared. "Drop the goddamn gun, or I'll paint this floor red." Eli froze. His finger tightened, but only slightly. The crowd, what little of it remained hidden in the shadows, watched with wide eyes. The air was thick enough to choke on. Mary struggled, kicking, but the barrel dug harder against her skin. Harlon smirked. "I reckon you remember her husband, don't you? You remember watching me put him down? Thought I'd give her a reunion. Family's important out here." "Let her go," Eli said. "Or what?" Harlon sneered. "You'll kill me." He pressed the gun tighter. "Do it, lawman. Let's see if that famous hand of yours is faster than her heartbeat." For the first time that morning, Eli hesitated. Not from fear, but from something heavier. He'd seen too many widows, made by the likes of Clay Harlon. Too many graves dug for other men's mistakes. The silence stretched. Then Harlon laughed, the sound dry and sharp. "Didn't think so." He shoved Mary toward his men. "Inside. We'll end this proper." They dragged her into the saloon, kicking the door shut behind them. The echo rolled through the empty street, like thunder off canyon walls. Eli stood alone in the sunlight, blood drying on his hands, the world gone still once more. He holstered his revolver, lifted his hat from the dust, and placed it back on his head. His face was streaked with sweat and grit, eyes cold as river ice. From inside, he could hear Harlon's laughter again, muffled through the walls. mocking, familiar. The saloon was silent when Eli Graves pushed through the swinging doors. The air inside was thick with smoke and fear. Chairs lay overturned. Glass glittered on the floor like ice. And in the far corner, Mary Carter sat bound to a chair, her face pale beneath the flickering lamplight. 3 men waited in the half-dark. Harlon behind the bar, his 2 last outlaws crouched low, guns drawn. Eli stepped inside slow, his boots whispering over the boards. He held his Colt low at his side, the barrel pointing toward the ground, a gesture that almost looked peaceful. The only sound was the faint groan of the wind outside and the ticking of the wall clock, each second like a nail driven into the coffin of the night. "Well, look what the wind dragged in," Harlon drawled, raising his glass in mock salute. His grin was cruel, carved deep into a face that had forgotten mercy. "You always did have a flair for timing, Marshal. Did you think dying once was enough?" Eli said nothing. He moved closer, eyes steady, his shadow stretching long across the warped floorboards. Harlon laughed, motioning to his men. "Easy, boys. The ghost just came to haunt us. Ain't that right, Marshal Graves?" Mary gasped at the name, tears blurring her eyes. She had known, deep down, but hearing it spoken aloud tore the breath from her lungs. Eli didn't look at her. He couldn't afford to. His gaze stayed locked on Harlon. "So it's true," Harlon continued, his voice rising with ugly pride. "You really are too damn stubborn to die. But I remember it different. I remember you choking on your own blood, calling out for God, and me standing over you with your badge in my hand." Eli's eyes narrowed. "You remember wrong." "Do I?" Harlon set down his glass, the sound sharp in the silence. "Tell me, how's it feel, Marshal, knowing every man you rode with his 6 feet under because of you?" Eli took one more step forward. "They died doing what you couldn't, holding to their oath." Harlon sneered. "You think that means something out here? This land don't care about oaths or lawmen. It belongs to the men who take it." Eli's voice was quiet, but it cut through the smoke like a blade. "Then I'm here to take it back." A muscle twitched in Harlon's jaw. "You sound just like you did that day by the river. You begged me not to pull the trigger." Eli's face was carved from stone. "No," he said softly. "Graves buried you." For a heartbeat, no one moved. The light from the window turned gold, the last of the sun spilling through like fire. Harlon's smirk faded, replaced by something colder, something closer to hate. Then, all at once, the room exploded. Harlon's men fired first, the deafening roar filling the saloon. Bullets splintered bottles, tore through chairs, sent glass raining down like crystal rain. Eli dove behind a table, the wood shattering under the hail of lead. He rolled, came up on one knee, and fired twice. The first shot hit a man square in the chest. The second found the other's throat. Both outlaws dropped without a sound, their blood spreading black across the floorboards. Smoke curled through the air, thick and choking. The lamps flickered, casting wild shadows across the walls. Eli's shoulder burned. He looked down and saw blood spreading through his coat. Harlon's bullet had found him, but the pain was distant, dulled by the pounding of his heart. Harlon stepped from behind the bar, gun raised, the barrel gleaming in the amber light. "You should have stayed dead, Marshal." Eli rose, slow but steady. "You should have made sure I was." They faced each other across the wreckage. 2 men who had once ridden under the same flag, now bound only by blood and memory. Outside, the wind howled through the cracks of the old saloon, carrying the last cries of daylight. Harlon fired first. The bullet tore past Eli's ribs, sending him staggering back. He gritted his teeth, steadied his aim, and returned fire. The sound was like thunder in a canyon. Harlon's gun flew from his hand, and he stumbled, eyes wide, a dark stain blooming across his chest. He looked down at it, then up at Eli, disbelief etched deep in his face. "You!" He started, but the words died before they could form. He dropped to his knees, the floorboards groaning under him, and fell forward into the dust. Eli stood over him, chest rising in ragged breaths, gun still smoking. For a long moment, neither man moved. The clock ticked once more, and the light through the doorway stretched across the floor like molten gold. The saloon doors swayed gently in the wind. Outside, the sky burned red, the sun sinking low behind the ridge, painting the street in a wash of blood and fire. Eli turned toward Mary. She was still bound, eyes wide, tears streaking her cheeks. He holstered his gun and crossed the floor, each step slow and heavy. His hand trembled as he cut her loose. She caught him as he swayed, the strength leaving his legs. "You're bleeding," she whispered, pressing her hand against his wound. He smiled faintly. "Nothing new." "Don't talk," she said, voice breaking. "You'll be all right. Just stay with me." He looked past her, toward the open door, where the dying light poured in like a final benediction. "It's all right, Mary. It had to end here." Her tears fell onto his coat. "Why? Why come back after all this time?" He breathed out slowly, his voice no more than a whisper. "Because the law had to come back, just for a day." His head tilted back, eyes fixed on the sky as the last rays of the sun faded from his face. His hand went slack in hers. The wind moved through the saloon again, stirring the curtains, lifting the dust. It carried the faintest sound of distant thunder, though the sky was clear. Maybe it was the echo of gunfire, rolling through the hills. Or maybe it was something else, the sound of the West exhaling one last breath of justice. Mary sat with him until the light was gone, until the stars came out and the world turned silver. Outside, the street was quiet again. The blood on the boards had darkened, mingling with the dust, indistinguishable from the earth it came from. When morning came, the townsfolk crept from their hiding places. They found the bodies of the red vultures sprawled across Main Street, their leader lying dead beneath the sign that once promised welcome travelers. And near the saloon doors, where the light had died the night before, they found Marshal Eli Graves, hat resting over his chest, as if he'd laid down to sleep. No one spoke for a long time. Then the preacher whispered a prayer, and the men lifted his body gently, carrying him out to the ridge where the wind met the dawn. By sundown, a wooden cross stood over his grave. Beneath it, someone had carved with a pocketknife. The law came back, and for a while, just a little while, the West remembered what justice looked like.